Do you know how empires really rise and fall? There have been many great empires. The Chinese, the Roman, the Mongols. But where are they now? They all seem to fail and crumble eventually. So what exactly causes a seemingly unstoppable force to be destroyed? Today we'll find out. Each empire is succeeded by another like a big cycle. The Romans, then the Dutch, then the British, and then Americans. And is the USA next to fail, or will they defy the odds of their rapidly looming downfall? To understand the future, we must first understand the past. After all, who says history doesn't repeat itself? Empires only last around 250 years from rise to decline. Empires rise due to the previous world's superpower dwindling and another becoming more advanced. When these two overlap, it creates a major shift and sometimes major conflict. In the case of the Dutch, who were previously occupied by Habsburg, or better known as the Holy Roman Empire, but became independent in 1851. This was the beginning of their new journey. Habsburg lost control over its empire due to weak leadership combined with a 30-year war, which left them poor and divided. This weakened them enough to lose control of their dominance and were subsequently overthrown as the most dominant force due to the Netherlands' growth and their decline. But what is the secret to the Dutch growth, or any empire's growth for that matter? New empires are built because they gain a new growth in income due to innovation. They then use these great riches to create a period of further growth and prosperity for their newly formed empire, which always results in building a massive army and just bullying the rest of the world into submission, which is surprisingly effective. Another major factor is during all great periods of growth, empires reinvest in their people. The most beneficial spending is on education. This leads to innovation, which in turn leads to great growth and further domination. Between 1550 and 1650, 30% of all major innovations came from the Netherlands. For the Dutch, their innovation was their excellent shipbuilding and financial sectors. Did you know the Dutch created the first stock exchange in 1611? Their ability to create superior ships allowed them to have the upper hand in naval battles and allowed them to travel the world to spread their newly found might and use it to make themselves very wealthy by creating very valuable trading companies such as the Dutch East India Company, which became so powerful it was its own army and became so large at its peak, was worth nearly 1% of the country's entire GDP. From 1625 to 1795, the Dutch reigned the sole superpower of the world, peaking in the 1650s. But as we all know, their empire no longer stands. But why is this? It's the same reason for their predecessor. Much like Habsburg before them, they suffered from losses in wars. The Anglo-Dutch Wars weakened their naval trade, and in turn, their economy took a huge hit due to its grown dependence on their global trade. They were spread too thin fighting of both France and Britain, and eventually paid the price as they could not defeat both. The Dutch innovation was no longer great enough to compete with nations such as France and Britain, who had created better naval ships than the Netherlands. France and Britain were now the two nations competing to be the most powerful in the world. But who would come out on top of this monumental competition to claim the vacant throne to the world? Both France and Britain had learnt from the Netherlands empire and trade and took it one step further. They started expanding far and wide around the globe, colonizing and creating massive trade routes like none ever seen before, ushering in their own periods of growth. Britain would inevitably come out the victor of the two due to victories over France in the Napoleonic Wars and the 7 Years' War, diminishing the power of their closest competitor. Britain was now the sole superpower, but their reign would come to an end. Starting to see a trend here yet? Britain's empire fell just like all the others that came before them. They stretched themselves too thin and couldn't suffer the losses, eventually leading to the collapse of their empire. The greatest losses were in World War II, with 1 million dead and their country in huge debt to the USA. Their dominance was no longer what it was, followed by the loss of India from the empire, which was another huge economic hit. They eventually lost their status as the sole superpower and were overthrown by the USA. You see, empires are not destroyed overnight. They dwindle over time and are left behind in the history books to be forgotten about. Now that the USA is the sole superpower of the world, but will China be next, as we have learnt from the past that innovation creates a new era of domination? In a war for innovation in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, will this determine the next 100 years of world domination?